Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 94 of the Home Games Podcast. I'm Yazeed, and this is Joseph.
Hello, I'm Joseph, and today is Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. I'm sick, so I will be taking a backseat role in this episode, but we're going to be talking about, I had some ideas about just a new form of content, I guess, and a new kind of thing that we can do, and anyway, whatever, we'll talk about it. But then I also had another thing about the plane and view interface stuff I was talking about last episode, basically just about having players that had different views of the world, and I started working on that and had some thoughts.
Right on. Well, do you want to go first, and then I'll talk about my stuff? Either one of the two. We'll basically make a sandwich, I think.
Okay. The first one I have is just quotes in the guts. Basically, on Halloween, I had this urge to first do this view feature thing that I'm working on, and I thought a kind of interesting way of doing that implementation would be to do it like on video, where basically I'd do the whole thing from start to finish, like the whole design process, implementation, all that kind of stuff, just recorded, and then I go back and edit and kind of put all the interesting things together, so that way the kind of I can come onto the podcast and be like, oh, this is how this works, but I don't really show a lot of the process of how I got there, and I think that stuff is interesting, like not just because it's me or whatever, but because I think it's interesting. So yeah, and then in the guts is what I wanted to call it because it was Halloween, so I had this like manic rush of adrenaline of just like, I'm gonna fucking do this, I'm gonna edit it and finish it tonight and whatever, and then I never started it, but I thought it'd be a cool idea.
I do think that would be a cool idea. I think editing it together is going to be a little bit more challenging than you expect.
Yeah, I think if I'm making it where it's like 6 hours of video and then going through and editing, just watching for the parts I think are good, I think that would be shitty. But really, I think it's during implementation, there are kind of key moments where you figure something out, right? Like your initial thing is just trying to understand the problem. You're just like, okay, well, I'm trying to model something where, like I've said before, there's the state of the world and players have different views of it. Kind of like real life or whatever, where the world just exists, but everything that you see is your view of it and how we can kind of model that. Anyway, after that, you get to this thing of like really understanding the problem and realizing that you don't understand the problem, which is like another key thing. And I guess during the process, I could just be like, signal to myself, like, this is going to be a good part or whatever. Like, so it won't be that crazy for me to edit, but either way, like it does sound like a long time. It sounds like a lot of work, I guess, but I do think it would be cool. Just because the best videos that I've seen of tech stuff are when they go super in depth in a way that I understand, and I don't really think I've done anything like that up to this point.
Yeah, makes sense. And I do think that would be really cool. I'm excited to watch mad scientist Joseph produce his Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, well, I think also it'll be a good way to. Sorry. Anyway, the rubber duck thing, like for people unfamiliar, there's this concept, kind of like a practice that no one really follows, but it's kind of a good thing in practice, like the rubber duck, where as you're writing code, you explain to the rubber duck how all this stuff is working, because the idea is that if you explain it to someone who has zero idea what's going on, you're forcing yourself to rethink everything from the beginning of why it's working like that and what's happening and whatever. So in a way, the video camera is like my rubber duck. So I'm forced to explain it, and I'm forced to kind of rationalize my thinking instead of doing what I do sometimes, which is just like, well, fuck it works. 2 times this number over the thing.x or whatever, and then Yazeed will figure it out. Fuck him, like, to avoid stuff like that beyond just kind of personal discipline when writing code. It's like, no, you're on video, and you're going to have to explain on this video why you're half-assing this. You know what I mean? It's like, it's tough. So anyway, I think it'd be cool. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with that idea or what, but I do think it's something I want to do at some point in the future.
No, yeah, I do think that would be really cool. And my topic is actually somewhat related to yours.
Yeah.
I've continued to go through the Home Games web stuff, and mostly what I'm doing right now is just pulling out some of the repeated logic and putting it into like helper functions that are more easily testable and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Wow, seeing Joseph without his glasses is certainly an experience.
Oh yeah, I'm not doing video on this one, so this is just for you.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, like an example of that, like a really basic example of that was there was code repeated a lot to build the RGB values out of the like array of length 4, right?
Yeah, when we're parsing on the client, when we get something that has a color, it knows that that's an RGBA value, so it's an array of 4, and I basically copy and pasted that.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get
yeah.
it out everywhere.
So I just pull that into its own function. We can test it and see how that goes and stuff like that. I do that in a lot of places, basically, of just, let's pull this out and make it an helper function. Let's pull this out and make it a helper function. I think what I'm going to do from there is actually like move them into their own file, like a helping file, just to kind of shorten up the length of the file currently.
Yeah. See, like right there, that's an example of if that were like on video or you're doing whatever, or if you're just explaining it away, just be like, I'm copying and pasting this code 7 times. I'm embarrassed. You know, like I should go make a helper function, and you can kind of explain why helper functions are necessary because you know, people don't get that, especially if they're just trying to learn from the beginning of just like, you know, sort of, anyway, whatever.
No, actually, that's a really good point of like the fundamentals of writing code is pretty. I won't say it's easy, but like it's mostly like mechanical. Whereas like knowing when something should be a helper function, when something is fine to be a single like just do a calculation in line or whatever, like that stuff is more tricky to learn, and really it's just more like experience and critiques and code reviews and stuff like that. But yeah, that's like where a lot of my time has been going, is just, you know, going through this code with a kind of a fine-tooth comb. One thing I did want to ask is, let's take borders for example, right? You know, you pass in like the value for how thick the border is.
Yes.
Right now, the way that you check that is you check it by saying like, if it's not undefined and it's not null, then let's do the border work. Which means that if the border was of length 0 or size thickness 0, for example, we'd fall into that case and just produce a border of no width, basically.
Yeah.
Is it okay to change that logic then to just be like, if truthy value of border, like if value is a truth value?
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of those cases like JS. You have to check if it's null or undefined, or if it's like an empty object, empty array, and that kind of shit. So it's just shitty to check for those cases. And that sounds like some code I wrote without thinking anything. So yeah, definitely you can refactor that. I think in a general sense, the greater problem is that if you change that, you don't know if it still works. And so if you change that, and then, you know, some border component of one game somewhere that we didn't manually test is now fucked, well, we didn't know. So I guess it would be nice to have like a way to compare screenshots, like do some sort of automated run and then just compare pixels, and this thing should match this thing, kind of like how I do on the back end, like I was talking about a couple episodes ago about just maintaining or not maintaining, but building tests that constantly test for like, you know, the state is equal to what it should be in different cases, and like there's no visual representation of it, but you're just guaranteeing that it, you know, quote, looks right, even though it doesn't look like anything. But yeah, definitely go ahead and change that stuff, I guess.
Right. I guess
and testing is a separate focus.
I guess like really what I'm saying is that we would lose the ability to render borders of thickness 0.
Oh yeah, that's. No, because what is a border of 0? If I say that I'm typing text and the font size is 0, when I hit the keyboard, nothing should happen. Right?
Well, so, text happens. It's just too small to see. Right?
But if it's 0, it's not that it's too small. It's that it's nothing.
Ooh.
This is like a philosophical
It is a philosophical question.
But yeah, I don't know. That sounds like an oversight, I guess, just in my check. Like, I didn't really think about the case of someone providing a border with 0, and I can't really think of a case where that would be valid, like where we would expect someone to have a border of 0. Because then every other property becomes irrelevant, basically. Why do I care about the color of your border when there's no size? Why do I care about the what the border is around if there's no size? You know, I don't care. So, Yeah, definitely feel free to change that.
Right on, cool. And the other thing too is just in general, one of the things I wanted to do kind of badly was pull out the big render into a series of supporting helper functions that render, and then just calling them correctly. Because I was
That'd
like,
be great.
this function is too long, which I don't like. I hate the like a function could never be bigger than the size of your screen or whatever. Like I
Right.
hate that so much. But that function was long. I was like, I want to pull this out into helpers.
Yeah. I agree. Like the kind of arbitrary rules on styling, or like for example, your function should be readable in one thing. Like those are generally good practices. But yeah, I mean the render function is essentially like just looking at the type of the message, and then you just need to perform some action. So that totally makes sense to just split up the actual functions into separate things, and makes it way more easy to read too. Because at the moment, if you go in and you're just like, oh, what a snazzy technology. Let me check out this render method. And you go and you look, and it's like, if array at index 0 is equal to 3, then check the color property on this thing. It's just like, what the fuck? So if it's just something like, if received node is of type shape, render a shape. The concept of rendering a shape is like over there. If you want to learn how that works, it's over there. So,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, so just kind of going through all those things. The thing is just adding TypeScript on top of it. One of the things I do need to do still is bring down the current changes to in that PR. There's a PR out with changes to Squish.js.
Oh yeah,
I need to
that's
point.
the draft stuff of.
Yeah, I need to point my local version of Home Games Web to that PR to make sure it all clicks together. Whatever changes I need to make to that Squish, whatever I need to changes I need to make to the Home Games Web. I think honestly, like one of the things that I want to do is in Squish create an enum, basically, where you can map the type to the name, so that in the Home Games Web, it's not like, does this type equal 4? Do this thing. I want it to be like, does this equal, like enum of shape, then render a shape. I think it makes it a little bit more legible and stuff. So that's a change that I think I'll make on the Squish side once I click them together.
I think I have like the start of that at the moment in Squish, where I have I introduce this concept of subtypes. So a node has a type. It could be something like we've talked about it before, but an asset or a text or a shape, and they're kind of fundamentally different things. But then within them, you can have different types of stuff. Like for example, this might not be a good example because it's could be handled in other ways, but let's just say that you had text and then you had kind of like a header or body, and those are subtypes of text, but it's all text. So you could check against that and be like, okay, I know that this is a 2D line, this is a 2D shape, this is a 2D whatever, versus a text node or whatever.
Yeah.
So that stuff should be there, I believe.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll start to leverage that too. Yeah, I mean, I think those like some of the bigger things. The other thing
What's
too
the worst thing about my code?
repetition. It's repetition.
The copy paste.
Yeah. You'll do the same calculation 100 times.
Yeah.
I legit was reading the scaling code, and I was like, this is the same code 100 times. And also, the other thing too, though, what's funnier about that is that sometimes the code fundamentally will get you the same value, but it's ordered differently. Like you'll be like, divide in parentheses, then multiply outside of the parentheses. And other times you'd be like, multiply, then divide. And I'm just like, all right.
Yeah.
Like I see that I feel like you redid the calculations, but they're the same fundamentally, just from the way like operational order happens.
The calculations were simplified, but the like weird overuse of parentheses is just me trying to make something more readable, where it's like these numbers are grouped in parentheses because they're different from that number. It's like I think it makes sense until it doesn't, but yeah.
I mean, I think one of the things that I need to do still is go through and unify some of that calculations, because almost all of it is about scaling. How do you scale this? How do you scale this to fit the screen? So I think I need to go through and just kind of like build equivalence classes, like equivalence sets, like these are the same calculation just move those into a helper function, or maybe build a helper function and inside of it there's like if statements or whatever to get you where you need to go. I'm not sure how to do that. I haven't figured that piece out yet. But yeah, honestly, like if I was going to say like what's the hardest thing about reading your code, it's repetition of code. The other thing too is hilariously you had a variable name called thing and then thing indices. And I was like, what is this? When I was trying to type it, I was like, what is this? Honestly.
It made sense because it's the thing that you get over the network. It's like, what is this thing, you know? And there's thing indices, I know that, but it's a thing. Anyway.
I just renamed
that's
it
what we were talking about.
To node and node indices.
Yeah, that's the correct name, but RIP thing. That's one of those things where every time I went into that code, I would see let thing equals whatever the fuck, and I would be like, one day I'll get that.
Yeah. So just like code cleanliness stuff. The other thing I want to do in this PR, but I think kind of badly, or at least see how it goes, is slap like prettier ESLint on it and just see what happens and just see how it goes. Yeah. Either it's gonna fuck everything or if it's gonna be okay. I'm not sure.
At some point we had an ESLint config, at least for Squish or something, one of those. So you could pick up from that, or you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna grab probably like the most basic one. One thing I do like is that we use spaces. Honestly, like this is like so stupid and pedantic, but like at work we use spaces and we use prettier and it changes tabs to spaces. So like it makes no difference.
Yeah.
I think we should run prettier because I think we use 4 spaces, which is 1 tab, I think, for spacing, for like indentation here in home games. So I don't know, just making sure that that's all correct everywhere.
But that's just how I've been doing it. Like, there's no real standard in the styling of the code base. It's just however I'm feeling at that point. I basically write all of my code like in a fight or flight response. Like I'm just like trying to just get it to work so I can move the fuck on to be safe, you know. So it just comes out like it was just like a first pass, because it kind of was.
Because the other thing too with prettier or ESLint is you can write a GitHub hook for it, which is pretty lit. So it does a check to be like, you have linting errors, please fix, or whatever, which I think is going to be kind of nice. Honestly, I think from working, right, because where I work now, everything is open source, so I can talk about it freely, but they have a lot of hooks that run when you make a new PR. And I like it because it really simplifies the like reviewing the code process. If you know that the linter ran and the lint is fine, you don't need to now like, I wonder if they use tabs or spaces or whatever. Like, am I going to open this file and be confused or what? But anyway, it's neither here nor there.
No, yeah, that I think having hooks on your pull requests and stuff is nice, but at a certain point, it's like, well, do I need to run 40 tests or whatever on every single thing, or is it kind of like, do I need to space these out and run some tests when they're actually deployed versus once the code is submitted? Because I don't know, it seems like at a certain point running that entire pipeline can just take a long time, and it kind of seems like overkill. But you know, we're not there yet to worry about it. So
yeah. I mean, I think realistically, we probably want like a linter to run and then tests to run on every PR, and I think that's pretty much it. I don't think anything else really needs to happen.
Yes.
Or and the like home dome stuff, but that I don't know if that would happen on PR or what.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say is we do have like our process for approving code, and I guess that's for games, and so we wouldn't be writing the games, and so I don't know if we would be but if someone does put up something that interacts with a service like that, it would be nice to have kind of an integration test. So like, does this work with the other stuff that we have deployed?
Yeah. The other thing too that I like about it is because Home Games is open source and hopefully millions of people want to be contributing to the code base. Having those hooks run makes reviewing PRs easier, because you can just be like, yo, your linter is fucked, or like, oh, you failed unit tests, go fix them.
But a linter, like, I guess I understand that a linter is important, but that's like the lowest of my concern is if someone has styling problems. But yeah, whatever. We do it all at once. It's the beauty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are all things that I want to get into here still. Yeah, just very dense file, app.js, and in there is just a lot of logic crammed into a very small amount of space. So yeah.
See, at this point, that one file feels like my life's work or some shit. It's like it's had more longevity than any of my other things in my life, except for, yeah, I don't know, like the people I know. But in terms of jobs and whatever, like I've been working on this shit for years. So it's like that one source app.js is essentially my child, and you're calling it ugly.
It's not ugly. It's functional. Honestly, it's like one of those like the it's whatever. I don't have a good comparison for it.
No, it's like dog ugly shit. I get it. No.
No. It's a functional code. It's just very hard to read if you haven't been working on it a lot. Like
it's like code written by a robot. It's like code written by AI, where it's like the AI figured out that these 4 lines can give you the properly scaled X value. So if I just copy these 4 lines in these 30 places, it works.
Did you ever see the GitHub Copilot write the even odd function?
No. Oh, where it just puts if statements.
Yeah, it like does it line by line. There was this like it's like if 0, if 1, if 2, and there was just like kept tapping to see how high it would go.
Yeah, that stuff is cool. I never messed with it myself, but I like the kind of memes that came out of it. It's pretty interesting technology. Like,
well, I actually don't know if you can. I think you have to be accepted into like beta.
Oh, well, that makes sense. But yeah, I've only seen videos of it.
Yeah, same. I have not. I know somebody who got into the beta, but I don't even think they use it. I'll ask them. I'll report back next time.
I mean, it doesn't seem like something that you would use. It's a cool idea, but it's not. I would never use that shit. We're talking about GitHub's autopilot, which is a feature that basically, my understanding is, they went and they just scanned all GitHub code to just kind of get an understanding of code. And then now it just auto-completes shit when you're writing something. It's like, hey, looks like you're doing this. And it'll just kind of auto-complete for you.
Here's a function some rando wrote that does something similar maybe. And then you say, okay. And then you look at that function and it's a horrible swamp. And you're not Shrek. It's just awful.
It just seems like at a certain point, that thing is introducing so much code that you either have to really, really carefully look at it while it's doing stuff and confirm that it's what you wanted, which kind of defeats the purpose, or you just let it go and you deploy robot code to production and you're just like, well, I don't fucking know how it works. It just did it for me. And then your boss is looking at you in that moment like, God damn, you're a total idiot.
This is a heavier discussion to have on that, because isn't that exactly how node modules work? Like, NPM is literally based on that idea.
You mean just in terms of like depending on dependencies and depend on dependencies?
Yeah, just depending on this code working, and you've no real idea unless you take the time to go look through it. Most people don't.
That's true. I guess the thing is, that's written by humans, and there's kind of this expectation that they're not... which is already faulty, but like the expectation that they're not doing anything wrong. Whereas a robot has no real intention. A robot's just doing something. So you have to double, triple check it because it's just doing something, you know?
Yeah, it's doing its best.
Exactly. All right, was that it for the web stuff?
That is all I had.
Okay, so a couple days ago, I sat down to seriously write the Vue stuff that we had been talking about. And I kind of realized, like I said earlier, after I thought I understood the problem, that I don't understand the problem. Or maybe I do and I'm overthinking it or thinking about it in the wrong way. But I sat down and essentially thought of a system where you can define kind of a 2D plane of an arbitrary size. This is a square. So let's say that I defined my unit size is 500. So I want a block of 500 by 500 or 2500 in total blocks of kind of like a map. Think of just like the Zelda map or whatever the fuck, like that. Mm-hmm. So then just kind of super high level, you have this plane and then you have different players that have a view of this plane. So let's say that player 1, their view is the center of this 500 by 500 grid. And their view is like 50 wide. So then it's like 225 to 275 in both ways, right? So it's like a centered square in the middle of this plane. And then you take their view and you basically do all that scaling stuff we were talking about, and then you just map that view to whatever their device is. So yeah, basically plane exists in the server sends out kind of a sliced view of this thing for everybody, and then everybody's kind of getting their view of it. And I realized that seems like it should be the interface for everything. Like maybe uninterface for everything, where if we kind of look at what we have right now, where it's game node, whatever, and you just define sizes, but you define sizes like in relation to someone's screen. Basically, your plane is someone's screen at the moment, right? There is no outside of the screen. Does that make sense? So like this is like the raw functionality of all this game node shit that we have at the moment. But if you wanted to have a different interface where instead of saying these are my layers and this is the game node root for this layer, it's this other thing of a 2D plane where each node within it has stuff that you can like view a subset of, as opposed to viewing just I'm trying to explain this, but it's hard. I guess I'm saying that this thing I'm thinking of is a layer in between what we currently have and making a game where someone can just say, basically, I've defined a thing of, like I said, 500, and I have this thing where I basically move it left and right and up and down on this thing of 500. Like, think of a Where's Waldo game. You can make a Where's Waldo game using this kind of custom interface, but you can still make Squarer or Layer Test or whatever with kind of the raw interface that we have underneath it. This other thing I'm proposing would just sit up on top of it, and it would be a different set of methods to call, which underneath are doing the layers and whatever shit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I guess what I'm thinking of is a Where's Waldo, like proof of concept, where essentially it's just plane with zoom and pan. And, you know, it'd be cool if there's like a little dude we randomly generate in there and you click him or whatever the fuck. And just as a proof of concept, again, just to prove that we can do it. But does that make sense to you? Like, does that sound okay?
I guess I just have a couple questions. First question is, you said that if, how'd you word it? We're only looking at the stuff on the screen.
Yeah, so that's what I mean when I say a player's view, right? Like a player's view is a player's screen. And the world state is the total set of data that a player's view is like sliced from. So if I have the Where's Waldo grid and the player's view is this middle square at 225 to 275, then we basically have this sliced subset of the world state or whatever, which we then, that's the player screen, right? Like we just put that into our existing stuff, scale it out to the screen and whatever the hell they do, because that's their view. This square, this rectangle, this subset of this thing, we basically just pick it out and plop it onto someone's screen.
I see. Okay. So it's not that they... So really what you're saying is like this is just like a... like a colander?
A colander?
Yeah.
Like
I don't remember the computer science word, but it's like a colander where it just like everything goes into it and only the water comes out of it and you hold on to the pasta. You know what I mean? Like you all the other game nodes kind of drain out and only the like nodes that are important to you stay in.
Yes. Yeah, it's a filter. It's a filter of the total thing. Or a colander, whatever. The code pasta needs to be drained. So I totally get what you're getting at.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the thing is, yeah, go ahead.
So go ahead.
Yeah, no, so it's a filter. Like, or if you think about a 3D game, it's the same kind of concept where it's just, I don't know how games work, but I know that in Doom, it runs really fast. And I think that it's because the world behind me doesn't exist until I look at it. And it's because that's what I mean. The world exists in the game data, but until you're looking at it and you put a view onto it, you're basically in that state. You're filtering out the world data, and the game is giving you a version of what you see. Right, like you're
Yes.
filtering out the things to your side and behind you.
But you can still
you're
be shot from behind you in Doom. So that
Yes.
that would still happen, right?
But you don't need to see someone for them to shoot them. And that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Is like the world state exists and things can be affected by the world state. It's just I'm specifically talking about the way that we do the view because right now at the moment the interface is you just have 0 to 100 as percentages of the player's screen, and you just if you wanted to have things outside of the player's view, you'd have to manage that in memory and like have fancy code and algorithms to manage them, as opposed to saying this thing exists in this XY coordinate and I can give my player a view of that XY coordinate, and then that will make their screen display this subset of this data. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess my only question then is like, so basically what you're saying is you're going to put syntactic sugar or like a layer between the actual like 0 to 100%, right? With like a grid that overlays on top of it, like a theoretical grid that overlays on top of it.
Yes, I'm giving people the ability to define a 2D plane as opposed to defining just the things that would exist in this 0 to 100. It kind of can go beyond 100, and that 0 to 100 is just what you're looking at within this greater plane, you know?
I see. So basically you can say like, give me 2000, and if they would only see 0 to 100, and when they turn, they would see 100 to 200, and they turn until they turn to see 2000 or whatever, right?
Yes. Or, yeah, I guess in other words, it would be the 0 of the screen for you is the top left corner, right? Like that's how we define it today. And in this new system of having a 2D plane and a view, the 0 of the screen essentially becomes the top corner of whatever that little square is of the subset of their view. Like if you're thinking about an Age of Empires, whatever map, where you have a little square on the mini map, that top left of that square is essentially the top left of the client's screen. It's just take this data and put it over there, give it to the people. You know what I mean?
I see. Yeah.
They're not looking at the stuff to the left, so it exists, but you basically translate whatever their view or their rectangle is of this thing and then translate it to their screen. I'm doing a shit job of explaining this, but I think it makes sense in my head.
I think that's going to be a lot harder than you think it is.
No, it's just math. And it's more math than I know, but just like the last thing, I'll just copy and paste my way to success.
I guess the reason I think it might be a little bit harder is specifically because
it's not that hard, actually. I already implemented it.
Really?
It's essentially the algorithm is everything's a square and whatever. So if I have a 500, then it's 500 by 500, and then you say, player view move to 50-50, or the player view is size or width 50, height 50, and the center is 250. Does that make sense? So within the plane, you say the center point of this view is 250x, 250y, and the width of this view is 50 across and 50 high. So that's just basically cut the width in half, and you have your center, and then you go out from there, and you just go out from the height and the width in a for loop to get all the indices that you need, and then just be like, okay, well, these are the indices that they need to look at. The hard part is going to be, or the inefficient part, the stuff that we can definitely optimize is okay, now that I have the indices that I need, give me the game that I need to show here. So how do I have a half of a red box that's half off screen, half on screen, because, whatever. But once I get that math right, that's pretty much done. It's not that crazy. But if we ever do 3D, then this will be fucked, because I don't know anything about math.
Okay, that's what I was thinking about, the 3D part of it, because like in 3D normally your vision is like a cone, and just like it's like a triangle, which like narrows as the further out it goes. So I was like, I don't know.
That's that vision vector projection shit we were talking about a few episodes ago.
That
sounds hard as
fuck. Ago now.
Yeah, when we have the home games math and science team, they're out here, the R&D department. We'll put them on the 3D stuff, and I'll be counting my millions on an island somewhere. But yeah, that was all I had really, is just kind of some thoughts on that stuff. And maybe when I'm not sneezing and stuff, I'll be able to actually write this code.
That's right. Yeah, I didn't have anything else. It sounds like you're big brain. Good job, bud.
Sounds like it. Maybe I'm just completely missing something, and we'll find that out next
This man
episode.
actually just has a fever and has been...
Just fever dreams have caused me to come up with the hottest, coolest ideas that don't actually make any sense. But in the moment, they're really game changers. But yeah, that was all I had.
Right on. I can close this one out. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, our music is done by our friend Tynan or at Niatan on Bandcamp. You can check us out on Twitter at homegames.io. We have a website, homegames.io. Or you can send us an email at some website that I don't remember.
Podcast at homegames.io.
Thank you.
The email address for that, yeah.
Thank you. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.